My name is Evie Wolf, and I am the current president of the Jungian Society for Scholarly Studies. Welcome to JSS Online. Today, our speaker is Dr. Inez Martinez. Inez holds PhD in literature, and before retiring, she was professor emerita at Kingsborough Community College. She is a self-taught scholar in Jungian and women's studies and a co-director of women's studies at the Kingsborough Community College. Inez has been with JSSS almost from the beginning, from the very early years, and she has served in many different capacities. She has been vice president and editor of the journal and the conference chair, among other roles. I personally have been looking forward to this talk for so long, and I'm so glad to have Inez talk today and see all the many people coming to this talk. I love Inez's poetry. You will get a chance to hear it today as well. Inez will talk for about 40 minutes, and if you have any questions that come up, please do use the chat area to type in your questions. The talk is being recorded, and it will be made available on JSSS, on the JSSS YouTube channel. I will be sharing the screen. I can see somebody else is also sharing the screen. I will have to take care of that, and in a moment we will start. Let me get the slides up. Okay. Let me see. Okay, I think we're good now. Can everybody see the slides on the screen? Maybe just raise your hand that you can see the slides. Heather, can you raise your hand that I know that we are seeing the slides? Very good.
So
I'm not seeing the slides.
yeah, I'm seeing SW's Sobel screen and it has a bunch of icons. Okay, now I think I'm seeing it. Now
Okay.
you're great.
Do we have
Yeah,
the
now you're
slides
great.
up? Fantastic. Inez, can you see the slides?
Yeah, and I can now.
Excellent.
Okay.
We're good.
That's good. Are we ready to go?
Yes. I'm handing it over to you, Inez.
All righty. Well, greetings. It's wonderful to see all your faces. I am so glad you are able to join me and one another today here. I want to say thank you to JSSS for making this gathering possible. And in particular, I want to thank our president, Evie Vestergaard, for the invitation and also for being gracious enough to undertake the task of handling the slides so that I get to concentrate on what I'm trying to say. I have promised some sort of synthesis of poetry and scholarship, seeking to understand psyche through imaginative literature. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about the psychology of grievance. I've been doing so partly because of the surprising emergence of expressions of being aggrieved by the culturally privileged. Jung says that the opposite of love is not hate, but power. It seems that the psychological force of victimization is claiming legitimacy of pursuit of political power, overriding laws and majorities. Reviewing my previous work in preparation for today, I discovered that I have been reading and writing about grievance and literary explorations of how to escape it in almost everything I've done as a Jungian literary critic. I've done it under other headings, such as self-discovery, shadow integration, cultural complexes. Today, I want to focus directly on grievance, and I'm planning to use three major works, two of which I assume many of you will be familiar with, and one you may not be. The Oedipus stories in Sophocles' Oedipus Rex and Oedipus at Colonus offer a paradigm of fixation in grievance. Kafka on the Shore by the Japanese novelist Haruki Murakami imagines the Oedipus stories forward, even offers a kind of open sesame about how to escape fixation in grievance. The difficulty in sharing readings of literature in a meeting like ours today is that we cannot together read and respond to the rich texts. That means that we don't encounter the figurative language that excites our senses, or the imagery and action that arouses our passions, or the allusions and juxtapositions that stimulate our thinking. Instead, we are limited to my highly selective, sparse accounts of the texts, the only saving grace, hoping it proves to be one, that my selections reveal what I have been able to glean about the psychology of grievance from these texts in order to illustrate for you what I mean by reading imaginative literature for understanding of psyche. Before I begin, I want to share with you 5 working assumptions that I have that you'll hear throughout this talk. The first working assumption: I attest to the power of the creative unconscious psyche, which I have experienced in dreams, psychological symptoms, complexes, writing, and in reading stories. Second working assumption: I believe that transformative literature, transformative imaginative literature, is informed by the creative unconscious. Transformative imaginative literature is not formulaic, comforting in its familiarity, or affirming of what we already think. It can be distinguished by its requiring readers to deal with what we do not assume. Much fictional literature is formulaic, pleasing us readers with what we already think and know, confirming our feelings about reality. Transformative literature upsets our assumptions about reality, requiring rethinking, perhaps emotional changes, entertaining the not previously entertained, or rejection of the text or denial of it altogether. In its most soul-engendering form, imaginative literature excites insights that reshape the reader's world. I would like to illustrate that for you with how James Baldwin's Sonny's Blues did that for me. Sonny's story is told by his older brother. Both boys grew up in Harlem and suffered American racism. The older brother repressed his feelings, became a mathematics teacher, married, and had a child who unfortunately died. Sonny became a piano player and turned to drugs to dull the pain of suffering racism. He was eventually arrested and jailed, left to detox by himself, unaided, in a cell. When later his brother, worried about Sonny returning to play music, finally asks him if he will return to drugs, Sonny tries to explain. Being alone with himself in that cell, smelling his own stink, unable to escape from his own stink, it occurred to him, crazy as it sounds, that smelling your own stink might somehow be good. Sonny then invites his brother to come hear him play. When, during the jazz piece, it becomes Sonny's turn to play a solo, he struggles with the piano until he finds his own blues. His blues contain the suffering of his ancestors brought over in the holds of the ships, the suffering of his uncle, also a musician, who was run over by some white fellows on a lark and killed, the suffering of his father, who thereafter, whenever he saw a white man, wondered if he was the man who killed his brother. In other words, Sonny's having integrated his own stink enabled him to transform all that previous suffering into music that was itself transformative. His brother was so moved, he finally felt his grief over the death of his daughter, his pain over his wife's grief at their loss. Sonny's story opened for me the idea that escaping just being a victim, as Sonny was, of racism, realizing one's own part in one's suffering, offers an escape from fixation in grievance. Sonny's escape freed him to turn not only his own suffering, but that of his ancestors into art, into transformative art, as his emotionally repressed brother was freed to feel his loss. It gave me the idea that the results of cultural shadow can be transformed for a present moment by individual psychological work, an idea you will soon see appearing in my comparisons of Sophocles, Oedipus, and Murakami's. On to slide 6. My third working assumption is that human beings believe we are psychologically free, but we are not. We are constrained by our socialization, by our personal unconsciousness, say, of our own stink, as Baldwin's story suggests, and by our ignorance of all that we do not know. That's pretty unconscious and pretty unfree. Fourth working assumption, I therefore think of the efforts to understand psyche, both our own and that of the collectives we find ourselves in, and those of collectives with whom our cultures interact, as the human work of expanding psychological freedom. That means potentially having ethical and newly imagined choices about how to live with ourselves and with one another. That's the work I undertake in hopes of making whatever small contribution I am given to that human work. And working assumption number 5, imaginative literature is a primary source for understanding psyche. Reading it for psyche is a way of doing the work of seeking greater psychological freedom for individuals, for collectives, and therefore for greater realization of ethical and imaginative choices for how to live as individuals and as members of society. As I've said, our medium today does not allow for us to share the generatively rich text of the Oedipus plays and the Murakami novel. So I've decided to experiment. I'm going to offer narrative poems based on the works for our reflections. I have attempted to bring them to memory in a way to highlight what they reveal about the psychology of grievance. I will begin with the Oedipus plays, which make clear much of what causes fixation in grievance. Here we go. Oedipus, ancestor, sung by the poets, born without malice in innocence, arrived storied by the gods as murderous, incestuous. His father, Theban king, believed his babe would be his death, would then take his queen, Jocasta, to bed. Fearful, hoping to escape, he commanded her to hobble and expose the infant. The queen gave their son to a shepherd to be left alone in the wilds of the mountains to die. The shepherd had not the heart to abandon the babe. He gave him to another shepherd who gave him to the childless king and queen of Corinth. Oedipus grew a prince, honored so by his parents and the citizens of his future kingdom, into his young manhood, when a drunk teased him with being no natural son of Corinth. Determined to prove himself, Oedipus sought from the gods' storytellers the seal of his parental source. But the seers spoke again the story attending his birth, voicing he would murder his father, sleep with his mother. Believing them, he abandoned his parents, his city, his inheritance. Running away, he faced an older man and his entourage at a crossroads. Knowing himself a prince entitled to his will, he slaughtered all, refusing to give way. Approaching Thebes, he faced the riddling Sphinx, eating young men unable to see themselves in her words. A proclamation offered the kingdom and its queen for destroying this devourer. Oedipus, confident in his conscious wits, named man, saw the Sphinx destroy herself, then assumed the crown and took the queen. Much prosperity and 4 royal children ensued until the fixating moment spring did not come, cows did not calve, plants did not seed, women bore dead feti. Oedipus hastened to save his city, sent to the gods' storytellers. An undiscovered regicide fixed Thebes in the season of death. Oedipus swore he would drive the murderer from his kingdom. Slowly his ignorance gave way. The man at the crossroads was the king. The man at the crossroads was his father. The wife of the king was his mother. The wife of the king was his wife. The story told of him was true. Oedipus seized his sword, rushed to his wife-mother's chamber to kill her, found her already dead, lowered her hanging body into his arms, plucked the brooch from her gown, plunged the pins into each eye, trying to unknow what he now knew. Blindness could not save the kingdom he knew as Oedipus. Choking with self-horror, Oedipus stumbled back to the public square, forgetting his saving Thebes from the Sphinx, forgetting his years of prosperous rule, forgetting his efforts to be a good man, a good king. As if no good remained for him to do, he declared, "I am that evil man." 20 years he wanders, a reviled blind beggar, led by his daughter Antigone, who teaches him his way. Finally, they reach Colonus, enter the sacred grove of the Furies. Oedipus recalls the end of the story told of him. He would be taken up by these goddesses of vengeance and bless the city of his death. Citizens of Athens accost him, appalled. He violates the goddess's sanctuary. Even more appalled, he is Oedipus, infamous parricide, incestuous son. Oedipus defends himself. No longer the evil man incarnate, he now claims himself a victim of the gods. Because he intended no evil, responsibility for his deeds belongs to them, pity for those deeds to him. One of his sons appears, wanting his blessing in his fratricidal war for the throne of Thebes. Only after Antigone pleads not to repay wrong with wrong does Oedipus even listen. Now believing his punishment too great, pushing away Antigone's counsel, aggrieved at his abandoning sons, Oedipus lashes his fury upon them both. In his father's image, he curses them to die by one another's hand. Spent, he retires to the grove of the Furies, gives Athens his blessing, and dies into the keeping of the goddesses of vengeance. The first determinant to consider when examining whether psychological escape from grievance is possible is Psyche herself. Is Psyche propitious to such an escape? In Sophocles' Oedipus tales, the gods represent the dimension of Psyche, and they are not propitious. They have knowledge of what humans will do that humans in unconscious ignorance do not. They give this knowledge to humans who pose their wills against it. Discovering his deeds committed in ignorance, Oedipus first becomes inflated, identifying with evil. Then, passion ground by 20 years of helpless suffering, he disowns what he has done as expressions of himself. He believes the gods are to blame. The Oedipus plays pivot on Oedipus' failure to take responsibility for his unconscious deeds in an accepting way. This failure underlies his initial identification with evil and his subsequent furious identification with victimization. His being locked in grievance leads to his murderous cursing of his sons, his repetition of the father-son murderousness framing his own life. Caught in death, in grievance, played out as vengeance, he is claimed by the Furies. Haruki Murakami's imagining the Oedipus tales onward in his novel, Kafka on the Shore, places assuming responsibility for one's unconscious acts by making amends as the transformative act, the key to escaping the psychological fury of grievance. I so wish we could indulge in slow reading together of this complex, amazing novel. Again, given our circumstances today, I offer an acknowledgedly skeletal version focused on the psychology of grievance. Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami, or Oedipus Reimagined. Haruki Murakami writes jazz rhythms, improvises, characters, say, a modern Oedipus, a young man named Kafka, a long thread from fallen Greek hero to suffering Czech Jew. Murakami improvises spaces too, placing Psyche's realm in Japan's woods, usually blocked, locked, but opened by Psyche's ward, Nakata. Psyche possessed Nakata during the starving times in World War II, stole off with his memory, his smarts, left him in the always present, where he talks with cats, only to discover a cat killer, Johnny Walker, eating the beating hearts of cats old man Nakata knows to make Nakata kill him. Johnny Walker won't stop slicing cat chests open, taunting Nakata with their cries, popping their hearts into his mouth. Overwhelmed, no longer feeling himself, Nakata plunges the knife again and again. Blood gushes, flows over the cat killer, not a drop on Nakata. Drenches the cat killer's son, Kafka, miles and miles away, fleeing his father's curse, parricide. In the realm of Psyche, we kill the afflicting father together. Kafka seeks his mother. She abandoned him, he knows not why. In a special library holding special poems, a special librarian, Miss Psyche, he finds shelter, a place to work and stay. Kafka watches beautiful Miss Psyche grieve her lost young lover, gaze at his image in a painting hanging in Kafka's bedroom night after night in her sleepwalking sleep. In the painting, a smitten young girl entranced follows the drawing of the young man into the portrait, her beloved. He sits relaxed upon the ocean shore, his back to her. One night, she takes young Kafka, 15 years old, oh, so in love with her, as her lover. More than one night, until he must escape police hunting his father's killer, hide until he brushes away advice not to enter woods where soldiers have gone and never returned. As Kafka strides into the woods, Nakata doing as he's moved to do, following any way the pull of Psyche leads, he knows not where, directs his disciple, regular guy Hoshino, awed watching Nakata live his life like a river unfolding as it goes, to lift and turn the stone, blocking Kafka's path mountains away, the path to the land of Psyche. Through the portal and into the valley of timelessness, Kafka meets his lover, the young girl in the painting who remembers him not. Then the older woman he knew, fresh from leaving her life behind. Unmothered, he finally dares ask, "Are you my mother?" Oh, she is sorry, so sorry. She who in her grief never before claimed any of the hurts she ever inflicted on Johnny Walker, on him. Will he forgive her? She struggled so to reach him here. As she breaks free, finally claiming her sorry self in front of his eyes, his heart cuffs open, fall away. Free as he has never before been, he finds himself able to mean, "Mother, I forgive you." Oh, now, she cries, he must hurry back. Here is your desire. In this place where life's web joins every separate scheme. You, she says, you were there on the beach, and it was always summer. Kafka closes his eyes, sees himself sitting looking at the ocean, watching the incoming waves, feels behind him his mother, such a beautiful young girl, and he is in love with her, and she is in love with him. Kafka just sits, muses. She takes her hairpin, pierces the underskin of her arm, squeezes out the last drops of her blood. Come, suck. Kafka, having returned as if in a dream to the portal's brink, hesitates. As he wavers, his mother's willing his life with her blood pulses through him, ushers him into himself, the world transformed. Murakami says no more. But as Kafka steps through the portal, our storied ancestor Oedipus, in the realm of Psyche, servant of the Furies, slips free of their clutching hands, bursts with laughter of release. Murakami moves the mysterious powers influencing lived life from the mouths of the gods' storytellers stories immutable because divine, to the realm of Psyche, where transformation is possible, from the realm of myth to the realm of the individual author's relation to Psyche. This move allows Psyche to become propitious. She intervenes first by claiming the kata as her own, becoming her instrument in literal life. He cooperates, choosing not to rebel against having been chosen to be, as he puts it, dumb. He does not feel aggrieved. Instead, he follows Psyche's lead wherever her infusions of intuition take him, assuming his unfolding grasp of what is called for him or his life's purpose. He performs what he understands himself called to do with attention, patience, and faith. He joins the literal world with the world of Psyche in his person, killing Kafka's father literally as Kafka murders him without intention psychically. Nakata also, by turning the literal entrance zone, enables Kafka to visit Psyche's realm to enact his transformation from aggrieved to beloved son. In Murakami's novel, a reciprocity exists between literal and psychic experience, Psyche affecting what is possible in the literal world, and actions in the literal world causing events in the realm of Psyche. This vision of life stories occurring in both realms interacting with one another provides the context for slipping free of grievance. The key to slipping free consists of accepting responsibility for one's unconscious life. That means, among other things, giving up the illusion that conscious intention provides innocence. It means accepting one's unconsciousness as a cause of suffering, as Miss Psyche's obsession with her grief caused her to hurt her husband and son. Once she is able in the realm of Psyche to acknowledge her responsibility, Kafka, who has come to understand the pain that trapped her and who witnesses the pain freeing her, is himself freed from his entrapment in his own grief of her not having loved him. Only with the many steps they each took separately and together could Kafka's mother consciously carry having unconsciously caused terrible hurt and want to work on what she has spoiled. And could Kafka experience real forgiveness of her and release from feeling himself a victim? Murakami's having created the interacting worlds of Psyche and the literal world establishes an interconnectedness that defies the apparent separation of physically distinct beings, including humans and animals. To become fully oneself is to become a more realized psychological interactor with everything and everybody, forests, cats, and parents included. Individuation, then, in its depth, involves both realizing one's story in the literal world and seeking to understand its part in being psychologically connected to the web of beings, those who have lived and those living still. Murakami, through Kafka, turns the Oedipus story of parricide and incest into transformative metaphor in the realm of Psyche. Kafka's transformation frees Oedipus from mythic entrapment in aggrieved vindictiveness. To be a self is to be psychically, timelessly enwebbed. I did not detail it, but Murakami's novels shows reading, including reading imaginative literature, listening to music, seeing films, and looking at paintings as ways we access our psychic interconnectedness. What I have shared today is merely one dip into literature's trove of psychological vision, hopefully illustrative of seeking more psychological freedom from the sufferings of being aggrieved. Imaginative literature's revelatory stories are legion. I encourage you to keep an eye out for them as you forage through their realm. You have been most patient. Your turn now.